Hey there, welcome to Better Conversations Live with myself and Ben Miller. Hi, Ben.
Hey, Siam. Hi, everyone. How you doing?
Good, good. We've got an interesting conversation this week with your guest, so looking forward to that.
Mm.
I'll let you do the intros in a little while, but as we just give people a little bit of time to jump on and join us, just want to post a couple of things up here. One is to welcome everyone. Do drop comments wherever you're joining us from, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, or on our website. Do drop in any questions that you have today for Charlotte, for Ben, and we will get through them through the conversation. In terms of joining us, would you like to do the honours, Ben?
Why not? Yeah, so we're here every Tuesday, 1 p.m. On LinkedIn, Facebook, and you can catch up as well on YouTube. So yeah, feel free to join us. I think you've got some other times here as well, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely do. Yep.
Wherever you are in the world, whatever those mean. But yeah, slightly friendlier or unfriendlier times in different parts of the world.
Yeah, we go from East Coast North America to East Coast Australia, so somewhere in between all of that. But just join us, and if you're watching the replay, please do comment, post questions in the discussion. We can continue the conversation and tell us what you think. And if you like the video, please share it, like it, and subscribe to Better Conversations if you're on YouTube. Also, if you would like to be our guest, you can get in touch with either Ben, Glenn, Hasby, Mag, or myself, or you can email bclive@betterconversations.co. We're all ears. What kind of topics, Ben, are we interested in? What comes top of mind?
Well, I'm interested in different thinking and doing, but it's anything and everything relating to leadership, really. So whether that's actually being able to ask better questions, being a good listener, understanding what things in cultures and workplaces impact your colleagues, it's anything and everything, really. But we're just trying to find the magic recipe, if you like, of what it is to be a super leader in quite a challenging time. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And so, yeah, you can get in touch, follow Ben, and you'll know when we're live, or if you've got a question around different thinking or a position on thinking differently that you'd like to talk to Ben about, please do so. Before our guest today is Charlotte Valeur, and a very interesting conversation, I'm sure, is going to ensue. So we'll look forward to that. Ben, do you want to tell us a little bit more about Charlotte before we dig into the article that you've picked for today?
Yeah, so Charlotte's got a bit of a star-studded CV. So she's had all sorts of different director and chair positions in her career. So I think she's tended to work in finance. So I think that finance and the boardroom. So she's founder of Global Governance Group. She's also the chair of Blackstone Group. She's a member of the London Stock Exchange as well. And she's also just recently started a global charity called Institute of Neurodiversity. So we'll kind of explore a bit of all of those things in our conversation. But yeah, she's got many other feathers in her cap as well. But that's just touching on it.
Brilliant. Well, it is. It's. I think there's a lot that's very interesting about what she's doing. So looking forward to that. But before we introduce her, which will be in a few minutes, I just wanted to pull up this one, which was, I thought this was a great article, Ben, that you shared about how to stop overthinking. I think we've all been guilty of that during lockdown lately. What was your take on reading the article?
Well, I think it speaks to me. Certainly, as I've worked more and more remotely, I've found myself overthinking, and perhaps just being in my head ordinarily a bit more than I would do if I was in a workplace and being around people and being on the move. Yeah, and I think you haven't got that feedback when you're with people, and yeah, you can basically read into things too much, overanalyze, and yeah, send yourself into thought spirals and come to bad reasoning. But then it can also stop you sleeping and everything else. But yeah, what about
Definitely.
you?
Yeah, no, I've definitely been guilty of it. And I what I would say is, I think over lockdown, I have trained my brain to just switch off when I recognize that I'm in a spiral. I have. I think I'm getting better at just going, I'm not listening to you, go away, which is some of the techniques that she talks about, Pia Callison, and about the fact that actually paying it too much attention may be counterproductive. And what we actually need to learn to do is just let the thoughts pass. And like a train, train's coming in, but I'm not getting on. So see ya. And maybe even leaving it, if that's hard, then leaving it to a later time to think about, saying, okay, this morning is not about dwelling on those things. I'm going to come back to that, excuse me, later on today. And hopefully by then they're a non-issue. But so her position is that we think we can't get out of this mode of overthinking, but with some effort, we potentially can. So yeah, interesting. I've popped the link to that article, Ben. Thank you for sharing that in the comments there. So for anyone who wants to take a look at that.
Just wonder if it's just worth, because there's a cultural perspective, and because we're talking with Charlotte about boardroom culture, that our culture in the West, UK and Europe and the US, we tend to be analytical thinkers rather than holistic thinkers, where a lot of other cultures are. So we have that cultural lens where we're analyzing problems, and so we are kind of as individuals, we play into this big kind of cultural hidden narrative where we are looking at details, we are thinking about problems, and so there's a cultural framing there. And societies, I can't remember the name of the historian or sociologist, but he basically pointed out that societies evolve when our thinking becomes automated. And so if we're just stuck in our heads, actually it can lead to procrastination. It can lead to inertia. And so actually we need to try and do a lot of this. We need to try and basically embody a lot of this overthinking and become a little bit more automated. So it's a heavy resource using our decision-making apparatus at the front of our brain. So that's just an interesting thing about the culture.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if Charlotte's got any thoughts on that as well. That would be interesting to get. Should we bring Charlotte in?
Yeah, please do.
So, let me get rid of that. That's not helpful. There we go. Welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Nice to see you, Charlotte. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you, and you too.
Well, look, I'm going to drop off. I'll still be here in the background lurking, but I'm going to leave you to get into the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Charlotte. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Very nice to see you. Yeah. So we did a short introduction covering a few of your current roles and things you're working on. But we were also the IOD at the same time as well, though we didn't get to meet a few years ago. So it's nice to be introduced to you a few months ago, and thanks again for coming on. But before we dive into your career and some of the various roles which you've had, we were talking briefly about education before we came on air, and you've got young children at university or about to go to university. What was, because you were born in Denmark, what was your reflection on school and education? What kind of springs to mind?
So for me, school was not fantastically easy to deal with. At that stage, we didn't realize that I was autistic, but that would have played in quite significantly. I was quite detached from school and pretty much lived in my own world. They did actually kind of say that I was stupid, which is interesting, but not so interesting when you're the one at the receiving end of that throughout your schooling. I had like extra classes. I was put into a separate classroom with one other student, and which obviously meant that the rest of the class also deemed both of us to be less intelligent than your average person who can hack it in the full classroom. So school was not a great experience for me. It was quite undermining and something I've had to work on for many years to overcome. And maybe part of it will always be there as and sort of inner insecurity. I mean, I've just started as a visiting professor at Strathclyde University, and it, of course, it's clear that I do have intellect, right? But sometimes I think some of that, feeling of inadequacy might still stay with you if it's set up when you are very young. So education and educational organizations are incredibly important, but they're not set up for the broader group of humans. They're set up for a very narrow middle group. And the rest of us on either side just kind of falls away. And that's a shame, because it's important talent we miss, and not all of the people treated like that makes it. Some people end up committing suicide because they feel so worthless that it's not worth for them to actually be in this world, and that needs to stop.
Yeah, it's when you paint that picture, it sounds cruel, doesn't it? And I think this narrow, narrow perspective of what education is and what performance and potential is. The longer we hold on to that narrowness, the more people that will fall either side. Were you aware, or did you believe in what the teachers in the school were telling you, or were you aware that actually you had different capabilities, if you like, different skills, different ways of understanding?
I didn't have that awareness, no. And I kind of believed that, because I clearly couldn't perform in the same way. I mean, for example, we had history lessons when I was 12 around the Second World War, and I had already read Winston Churchill's biography because I found that interesting, but of course nobody knew. And that wasn't exactly the curriculum they were teaching, although it was related. It passed through unseen and unheard, and that's kind of that. So the kind of interest that I had went fairly deep, but it wasn't fitting in with the school curriculum, so nobody knew about it. I was just a quiet girl. I mean, I was saying very, very little up until I was 12 or 13, because saying nothing, I just couldn't come into the discussions that people were having. I had nothing to add, right? So I just stayed quiet. So I was just the quiet, the quiet girl. Yeah. And all my grade papers would say that I was unfocused, all of them.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting how how wide of the mark we can be, but also what we are in one context doesn't mean it's going to be the same in another context.
That's right.
Different teachers have an amazing impact, good or bad. But yeah, it's really interesting. And so reflecting on where you went from education. So my experience of education, I basically had work experience at a train station, announcing trains and doing bits of admin. So I had 2 weeks there, and I knew basically I just didn't. I knew what I didn't want to do. I didn't necessarily want to follow in the footsteps of my mum or dad or work at a train station. I knew I didn't want to go to university, but I didn't really know, and I was lucky that I found good role models along the way. But what was your aspiration then, or kind of inspirations, which took you into the world of finance? So how did you get from being somebody that didn't speak very much at school to being a, let's face it, quite male-dominated environment and fairly cutthroat in many ways? So what was the change there?
I don't really know, because we don't really have bankers in my family, or we didn't at that stage. I did start working at 13 to have my own money and be able to choose to buy clothes for myself. I always had hand-me-downs from my older sister, so it was quite, I wanted my own clothes, right? So, you know, I was in a library for years, which I loved. I was in a candy shop. I was doing cleaning, strawberry picking at 11, stuff. I was always active with something that I could just get on with, but generally things that wasn't super outgoing in a way. When I went to college, so in Denmark, it's a lot more flexible with being able to go to college. It's not so grade dependent. If you want to go, it's basically open, or it was then, it's open for you. So I got myself through A levels, and I knew I didn't want to go to university, because in Denmark, university was minimum 5 years, but more like 7. And I just couldn't see myself in education. I wanted to do something where I could work and educate myself at the same time. So I was looking for things where that was possible. And the things I could see that I had some interest in was banking, insurance, or the tax office. And so I thought, we'll start with banking. And I literally took the telephone book, as we had those days, a big, thick yellow one. And I wrote an application to all the banks in the telephone book. It's just very sort of systematically. And I got 2 offers. So I didn't need to go on to insurances and tax office. I got 2 offers out of all the applications, 20 odd applications I sent. And I took one of them. And that was really the savior. So that's as a banking apprentice. And I started as that at 18. And it was a 2-year sort of education where you go around all the different things you do in a bank branch. And then you do a banking degree on the side in the evening over. So the first part of it, the first 2 years, and then another 2 years after to have the second part. So, and I just fell into it, just worked for me. I was just very lucky. The whole banking scene just worked really well for me. And I just, when I like something, I have a strong focus, and I did well. So by the time I was 22, I got headhunted to another bank to do investments and look at pension investments and this, which I enjoyed. I got to know the dealers on the stock exchange there, and I thought, that sounds really funny. I think I want some of that. So my former bank came back after 3-4 months and said, try to headhunt me back. And I said, well, I'll come back if I can be a stock exchange trader. And they went, okay. And that was it. And I got onto the stock exchange aged, I think, 22, 23, with a book of the biggest bank in Denmark, and set prices there. It was quite overwhelming in the beginning, but it just worked for me. I didn't really notice that we were only 3 women and a couple of 100 men. I just enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so you mentioned focus there, high focus, and you also mentioned systematizing, if you like, so very systematic way of approaching all of these different banks and opportunities to work. What other traits and be it sort of skill sets or character traits, what other things started to emerge as you went through your career?
I seemed to start developing a bit of Tourette. I had a bit of a reputation for really having a potty mouth a lot those days, and it still happens on occasion. But it's just it felt very satisfactory to be. Maybe that was how I also survived along all the guys. I don't know, although it seemed to be kind of worse than all of them. But I think the focus and the ability to systemize was what was the strongest traits that helped me a lot. I'm also generally sort of very punctual on timing, and I deliver what I'm set to deliver. I don't really go from side to side. I'm relatively loyal. I was in that bank for 10 years. After that, I just kept getting new, better jobs offered every sort of year and a half, 2 years. So I did have a sort of 10 years of then switching every 2 years from one bank after I moved to London. So the Danish bank sent me to London to work in the office there. And I really like London. London is still the city that I like the most in the world. I felt very at home there. I like the British culture a lot. And I always wanted to leave Denmark, strangely. I'm not quite sure why. Since I was 7, I was looking at the airplanes thinking, I'm leaving one day. And I did. Or the rest of my family are still back in Denmark. But I kind of love being like a foreigner in a country, actually, because I can be different, and it can be blamed on me being Danish, and then I can actually be myself more, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I do see what you mean, and it's strange. As much as I love London, I lived there for quite a few years and moved out a few years ago. But I don't know. I have like momentary thoughts when. When you're opening up all of the paperwork, which we still get in this country, and it's a bit like death by 1,000 paper cuts. We're kind of addicted to paperwork here, and there's just like an insane amount. And I hear in Denmark that everything is digitized, everything is automated, everything is really, really quite simple. And for me, just the time and attention that might free up from having to deal with kind of routine admin to do stuff which is actually more impactful. So maybe we should look at doing a swap, because actually getting my attention back for a little while would be fantastic. But can you speak to the kind of difference really in just a few examples perhaps of how Denmark and here?
When I came from, there was just in banking terms, for example, when I started in 82 as an apprentice, how we read checks was we just took them through a machine that just read the bottom line of it, and that was it, and it all accounted, it put everything up, blah, blah, blah. It was all automated. In the UK, it seemed that for another 20 years, you would put them in little bunches and send them between the banks instead of reading them automatically. So I was really shocked with how that worked. And also, when I moved to the UK in 91, obviously you don't have like a CPR number. So we have a personal number, that's our birth date plus four numbers that is unique to us. And everything goes through that, our taxes, our health, everything. And it's been set up like before I was born, which means you don't have to have references and stuff. So when I came here and I was needing electricity and water, and I had to go and dig around for people who could reference me. But of course, in the UK, there wasn't any. I had just arrived, right? So even getting a bank account was really long. I mean, and I had been, for years having people come in from the street, say, I want a bank account, bang, they go away with a bank account, right? Yeah. Here, 2 months later, I still didn't have a bank account, right? Yeah. And I was like, what is going on here? It was just so long. And still we have the whole paper thing here. I don't understand why it hasn't been embraced a lot more. I do think, as far as I know, that Denmark is the most digital country in the world in terms of both in, we had digital signatures when I was buying a summer house with my brother, 20 years ago, and that was all digitally. I didn't have to come and sign in person, right? We just did it digitally. And that you can't do here. You have to be there in person for your signature, what have you, unless you give power of attorney, whatever. It just, the savings that could come through digitalizing all of government and all businesses is significant. And you free up people to actually do something they like instead of tedious manual things that could actually be done by AI. By now, there's really is no excuse. I'm working with a private equity firm, and we owned a couple of years back a fitness center that has 500,000 members, and 36 different smaller business organizations they had bought to grow this bigger company. They had 36 different operating systems. And they didn't try to get everybody to use the same operating systems. They simply inputted 4 robots into the system, logged them into all the 36 system, and the robots dealt with bringing it all together into one.
Yeah.
It saves them 340,000 euros in 3 months. And they cost 40,000 euros to put in.
It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
It really is,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's not until you see it in action that you're thinking, why are we not doing a bit more knowledge transfer here? Why are we not sharing a bit more of how hard or how easy it actually is, right? There's not enough of that. We need more of that.
Yeah, definitely. And so you've got you found Global Governance Group, and so you work with boards, and I guess you're supporting with decision making, behavior change, and accountability, and various other things which go on in the boardroom. And clearly the savings which you just gave a glimpse of, they can cascade throughout the organization. So how important is different thinking, different perspectives in the boardroom for making these types of changes?
I mean, for me, it's incredibly important because it's very clear the different thinkings come to the table. We can challenge each other and learn from each other all the time. When you have people thinking the same way as you, there isn't that much challenge. Even when I'm in with a group with all neurodiverse people, for example, we just get along really easily. There isn't big disagreements we have to deal with. But when you get, for example, neurodiverse and neurotypical together, there's much more communication is much more difficult, but it's also much more to learn on both sides. We can learn a lot from each other, right? And the same goes with people from different backgrounds, different upbringings, and the different genders. I mean, men and women fundamentally are different, right? I mean, and I celebrate that. I mean, I like men, right? I don't want men to be women, and I don't want me to be a man. I want those differences. That's my preference. I mean, I might maybe due to the autism be a bit more like a man in some of my thinkings, in that it's all based on very, very strong logics and can be quite tunnel visions when I have a goal I need to reach, and then to the expense of other things around me. But generally, I mean, like in the boardrooms, we need women who are women. We don't need women who, it's through being men and women, we provide that diverse aspect. And during the pandemic, I saw very clearly a difference in thinking when we were discussing life against money, right?
Yeah.
And we need to acknowledge these differences and embrace them, and then learn from each other. That's what nature intended. We've got to honor that. That's what we've been dropped into, right? But I mean, we had women generally were more concerned with health and well-being, and men were more concerned with the income. And none of those two on their own would work well, right? It has got to be the blend where you balance both sides and bring both to the table. And the boards that would have been all women or all men would completely have lost out on that balancing, and most possibly made more wrong decisions than what naturally occur anyway, right? So I think the pandemic has really shown us in a really strong way that powerful mix of different ways of thinking. And to say that men and women think the same is just crazy. We don't think in the same way. We were literally, nature made us to not do that for the survival of the species. And again, I mean, in many ways, we're not that far away from the caves, right? We think we are, but actually our behaviors are pretty primitive quite often.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I'm just interested actually. How far have we come? So you've been in and around boardrooms for a long time. No doubt we've made progress. Where's your assessment on what we've done so far, and actually, where we're still struggling? And we can look at it from a gender perspective, as well as a neurodiverse perspective, and an age perspective, frankly, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that diversity goes across everything. So, like neurodiversity, gender diversity, generational diversity, disabilities, LGBTs. I think there's certain things, even the professions behind it. For example, like lawyers, there's a reason they're drawn to being lawyers. Bankers, there's a reason they're drawn to be bankers. I tend to get along really well with bankers and understand easier where they come from. But when you have people from different professions, engineers, lawyers, accountants, you can see that they have different skill sets and different focuses, which means that you have to have that blend to make sure that you really cover all the angles of the deeper thinking that different people will do in different areas. And if we don't have that in the boardroom, we might make decisions easier, but they could well be the wrong decisions. So I saw the last 200 years have been quite important in humankind, with technology coming up and the Industrial Revolution and where we are now. It has been male dominated everywhere, and all decisions made has been male dominated. And although we don't know what it would have looked like had it been a balance, I think intuitively and logically that there might have been more thoughts about what does it do to the environment we live in? What does it do to the planet we're in? What does it do to the social environment of all of us, our children, our families? What does it do to employees? So we might not have made the kind of decisions. I mean, progress that we deem progress is actually not progress. I mean, is plastic bottles progress? Well, it's convenience, but it's not progress, right? We're now suffering from that. And there's a lot of things we've done that makes us suffer rather than being in a better place. So we need to be quite clear that someone who would challenge the thinking over the last 200 years might have been able to have the world in a better place by now. But anyway, we are where we are, right? But at least now with hopefully more awareness, we can go in and make different decisions with more blended people. Yeah,
I agree. And so do you see that there's an opportunity here for not seeing difference as a threat, but maybe seeing it as an opportunity to embrace? And how do we start actively embracing different thinking in the boardroom and anywhere, frankly?
Yeah, I think there is a great opportunity here to actually embrace differences, and it's something I've been speaking about for the last couple of years, about the cognitive development we as a species are going through, and have gone through, obviously, since we lived in caves. I mean, some 100 years ago, we found it's okay to burn people publicly on the fire, right? At least we've moved on from that, right? So we do move on a bit all the time. And I think it's the awareness that we do move, and our brains are elastic, and we know and learn new things all the time. What's quite interesting is that Gandhi, some of what he was saying, Mahatma Gandhi, years ago, was that he was leaning into sort of the truth and the non-violence, the truth being that people are different in all ways. That was his truth, right? People are different in all ways. This is not new stuff. I mean, talking about differences is not new. It's been happening as well for those couple of 100 years. He did have a massive following, obviously, as he continued, and with his sort of non-violence, he's believed that you should never resort to violence to accept differences and to settle differences, if you want. And in the end, he was assassinated. And it is very interesting that people, of course, Martin Luther King was was leaning on Gandhi as well, and got assassinated. So these kind of thinking seems to be threatening to some, right? So when we do push in and say, no, we have to accept differences, there are some people who doesn't like that enough to kill. And that's kind of interesting. And I'm hoping that we slowly come up to higher levels of operating where we don't see the need to kill someone who is actually getting a following around accepting differences. But that is literally what we have done for a long time, which is very sad. But it's difficult to say exactly what needs to happen. But I would like leaders to lead the way. I would like when you hold yourself out as a board member, you hold yourself out as a leader. I did have one board member once saying to me, I don't see myself as a leader. And I was like staggered. I said, well, what are you doing on boards then? Right? You're leading an organization with people and assets and what have you. So we are leaders, and then we have to behave like that. And we should behave as leaders to make the world a better place to be in. I would like to leave the world in a better place than I received it, but it's becoming increasingly difficult for me to be able to do so. And that's saddening.
Yeah, in isolation, it's very difficult to do it alone. But I think this is a great opportunity for organisations to really, forward-thinking organisations to really take a lead. And you mentioned plasticity there, and there's an old adage that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So it used to be the case that we used to think that our brain was reasonably fixed, and who we are when we're in our formative years was the person that we would always be.
Yes.
But I think that there's been plenty of research which suggests actually our brains and minds are more flexible and plastic than we realize. And I think as we get older, we become less open, more agreeable, and less extroverted. So we tend to avoid new things. We tend to avoid risk, and we tend to, lean more towards conformity. And so we kind of, and I suppose at the same time, we've got getting older and older people on the board, and so we kind of really have this. This challenge where the kind of nature of human nature is kind of shaping the wrong types of traits, I think, that we want, particularly on boards right now. So how would you change the interview process to get people perhaps who live with autism or other different thinkers to join the board? So
with the getting older, I always kind of thought that when I get older, I'm going to get worse. I'm going to be so irritating, right? Because actually I can, right? And I have a lot of experience. And once I've paid for my children's education and have them off my payroll, then I can be really, really annoying. And I have all intentions of being that and looking really weird as well with flowery clothes and what have you. But anyway, apart from that, I think the interview process, we do need to get the generational diversity into the boardroom, and that's very, very important. And I think the onus is on the boards to develop new board members, and I have thought that for a long time, which was why I launched Board Apprentice back in 2013, a bit ahead of time before people were ready for it. But the very unfortunate circumstances last year with George Floyd meant that the conversation in the boardroom changed a bit into board members understanding that there were unknown unknowns around diversity that they were just not quite clear on. So we've had more boards coming to us the last year than ever, because actually having a diverse person in the boardroom as an apprentice, if you want, as observing you for a year, is a bit like field training for board members, right? In diversity, because you actually have that diverse person in the room and you get to know them through a year. And that seems to teach the boards, whilst they don't know they're learning, they learn on the job as well as the apprentice does. So it's a very win-win situation. I think the interview process, again, when you apply for when you put out the advert, it has to be as open as possible. There's little restrictions as possible, and simply say we're looking for just very 2 or 3 key things that you absolutely must have, but otherwise just don't try to describe the person too much, because inadvertently you will use words that are discriminative to some people.
Yeah, agree. Hi, CM.
Hey there. Hey, I jumped in maybe a little bit earlier than normal, only because there's a question from Glenn, which I think speaks to this question that you were asking and Charlotte was answering. So Glenn's question is this: is rational thinking, creativity, and analytical thinking quantitatively measured or assessed at board level, or are the key measures still general intelligence, IQ, and experience of the industry?
I haven't really been in situations where I've been measured. So there are these psychometric testings that we do with some board members in advance if we're using an executive search firm who offers those as part of it. And we have used that. I didn't feel that they threw up the kind of things that I would have liked to see and understand of board members, because again, these assessments, who's made them and what are the inbuilt biases in them as well, right? So I think it's very much background, but it's still very much network, right? It is still quite sad, but it still is very much who do you know and who is bringing you into the table effectively, right? And I think, I don't know how we get away from that. It's just a comfort thing for boards that they want someone that they know and are comfortable with, where my motto is hire someone who doesn't fit in, because that's how you get real challenge in the boardroom, which is what makes us grow. You only grow when you get challenged. When people agree with you, you do nothing, you stand still. Who wants to stand still? I mean, I don't want to stand still. I want to learn all my life. But some people are very comfortable standing still. And back to what Ben said around, I mean, some older people from like last century's style, if you want, actually do feel that I've learned what I need to learn. I have no more to learn. And I will never go back to school and learn anything, where I will never stop learning. I'm thirsty for knowledge. I'm always thirsty for knowledge, right? And I think it's very sad when you stop developing. I mean, I know that the brain, like you're born with a million open brain sort of neutrons that are looking to find each other. And by the time you're 12, around 500 million has found each other, depending on how much input you've had. And then that we believe that was it. But actually it's not. It's not. We now know that the brain can form new connections at any time in life. We are elastic enough for that. And so if we believe in that and embrace that, we're opening up for a far more interesting and deeper life experience, right?
Yeah. And I think that whilst we're on the brain, Charlotte, we didn't get a chance to talk about Institute of Neurodiversity just briefly, but obviously you were diagnosed with autism quite late in life. Likewise, I was with ADHD, and I think a lot of people are I think more and more people are getting diagnosed later in life. Can you just talk a little bit about the why of Institute of Neurodiversity, when it's happening, and what it is? And I think just that there'll be a few listeners who will be interested in checking it out.
I'd love to do that. Thank you. So yeah, I came out publicly last summer, which was very scary because I wasn't effectively completely sure whether it would mean me getting discriminated against when people knew I was autistic. I wasn't sure, but we had a family meeting and me and the children agreed that we could do that and take whatever came with it, right, for the better of everybody, and hopefully to move the narrative on. That led into me being very, very clear that there is a gap in the world for someone who represents neurodiverse individuals. And when I say neurodiverse, I go across, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, Tourette's, whatever. There's many, but basically different thinkers, people where their neurological setup is different from what we call neurotypicals. And it's not going to be sort of a them and us kind of situation at all, because ideally, in the end goal is that we're all allies together. We're all accepting of each other in whichever differences we have. But that's just not where we are now. Now we're getting massively discriminated against starting in school, right? So we need to change these kind of things. But you can only really affect change by, one, having a sense of urgency, which is increasing with neurodiverse people, and then having a powerful coalition. The powerful coalition is hopefully iron. That's all of us coming together with a voice. And we will have monthly sort of little mini surveys around the things that are important that we can lobby on for us in all the countries. It's a Swiss institute, and we will have chapters in many countries, everybody in all countries, hopefully in the end. And we are collaborating already with a number of institutions in different countries to bring us all together under one umbrella. And it's through that. We're not great at coming together, right, in groups. And I was hoping to make this an easy way where we can bring our voices together as a powerful coalition, as neurodiverse individuals and our allies.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I think that's a great summary. So CHAM's put some links in the chat, and are there any dates which you want to put on our radar? Because
yes, October 15th is our launch day, and we're hoping to launch with a handful of founding corporate members that we are in the process of signing up. So any corporates who would like to be part of this sort of a global grassroots movement, if you want, but they would also be supported so that their employees would be supported. We would support them setting up neurodiversity networks in their organization, and also outside of their organization, support with local neurodiversity networks. That's going to be the spine of what we do, is having these neurodiversity networks like a mesh around the world where we all connect with each other through that.
Sounds fascinating. Yeah, looking forward to seeing how it unfolds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've shared those links out. It does sound fantastic. I was wondering, there is an age aspect to getting on boards, and you talked about at the moment it's still very much about who you know and trusted authorities and so on, and a thought I'd just share an experience. I spent some time in New Zealand, and I worked with the Institute of Directors on a voluntary basis, and they were really pushing for one was about education around financial reporting. So if you're on a board, you really need to understand and be able to feel confident looking at financial reports, but also encouraging more, certainly more women and more diverse groups of people to actually consider joining a board. And there were lots of great ways they would either sort of sponsor or offer scholarships, or they would actively mentor, seek people out within the community. They did quite a lot on that front. Recognizing that it was quite a closed group, and they had an identity problem in that they were always perceived in a certain way. I wondered what your thoughts were to encourage, because I also talk to and coach a lot of women who are very much leaders but don't see themselves as leaders and have a great deal to offer. What advice would you give to anyone who's thinking about getting on boards? What could they do?
When obviously I have to say Board Apprentice as a start, right? Because it actually 78% of our finalists become board members within a year. So it's somehow a concept that works extremely well. I think what happens when you're in the boardroom for a year observing a board is that you gain that confidence. You understand this is not rocket science. It isn't rocket science. It's common sense. You got to bring an amount of common sense to the table. And we then give, so I have some courses online I with sort of applied governance. For me, governance sits over everything, like strategy, sustainability, whatever. All of it sits below governance. Without governance over everything, you don't get anything done. So for me, it's very much about the practical aspects of being a board member. There's lots of courses you can take in business schools at NID, blah, blah, blah. They more teach you the theoretical aspects of it. What I'm interested in is the practical piece. When you're at the table and you're supposed to do risk oversight, what does that mean? What does it look like? What is it? Right? What exactly? What are the questions? So I have a book we have just published. Well, we pre-launched it, called Questions to Ask in the Boardroom. Again, very applied, very practical. Here's the 20 questions, 54 different subjects with expert contributors. Here are the 20 key questions you need to ask in strategy, in cybersecurity, in whatever we could think of that are things that comes to the board table. And that's an open access, free to download globally book. And there's a website, qta.world, that where people can sign up to get the link once it's free to access. But those are the kind of things that gives you that practical feeling of what are the discussions we practically have in the boardroom. It's not just about, here's a corporate governance code. I mean, how dull is that? It's important, but you can do all that in your own time, right? It's all there. You Google it. It's all there. But the practical aspect you can only learn from the practitioners. And that's where we as leaders in the boardroom need to step up and offer that seat for education and teach these people what the practical aspects of being a board member is. I'm like very passionate about that, as you can tell.
Well, no, absolutely. Well, we're all about conversations here, Charlotte. So you're in good company.
We're a social franchise, so it can be set up in any country. We're in 3 different continents currently. We just launched in Africa with the Boardroom Africa. We are in the Caribbean. We're in different continents in Europe. We have different groups in the UK. We have one in Manchester, one in London. It costs nothing to set up as a franchisee. And we have set it up in a way so there is enough income to cover the administration of it. So bring it forward.
Wow, fantastic. Well, if you share those links with us, Charlotte, we will make sure we drop them in the description, all of that. So we'll add all of those. We've got a comment from someone saying, this is Wanda Deschamps from Canada, openly autistic entrepreneur diagnosed at 46. I have added October 15 to my calendar. How can I help promote the launch?
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, it would be great to have a connection in Canada that would maybe start the institute there, for example, and be part of spreading the word. It's free for individuals to apply, and we're trying to get the businesses to be the ones paying for the administration. We have to have someone to pay for the administration through being corporate members, which is 5,000 sort of pounds, Swiss francs, dollars, whatever it is per year. And for that, they get the various services for their employees. So we think it's good value. It's same pricing as what other diversity groups have. But neurodiverse people, actually, I think we are up to like 30% of the world population when you go across all of them. We're significant. It's just nobody knows. And we want people to know. We want to show people. So we have a lofty ambition of being 1 million members, individual members, by 2025. So go on in Canada and bring those members on. And we can then all really stand together and show who we are and show our voice. And we'll have lots of lived experience, for example, podcasts and blogs that will get the world to understand that we are not all like technology geeks. I can hardly figure out my phone sometimes, right? But I'm in finance. But we have someone who's social care workers as well. We have artists, we have engineers. We are everywhere. We are a vertical slice of society, right? And people need to understand that and stop pigeonholing us into one place. We are vertical in the same way as we are some that are very successful. We are others that are less successful. We have people that have additional disabilities. We have all kinds of things, as you do in a general population. We are the same as that. And that's what we would like the world to understand. And we are all embracing of all neurodiversity and all kind of neurodiverse people, right? We are in all cultures, in all genders, in all layers of society. So let's just all of us come out. So helping in Canada would be amazing. And thank you so much. And also link up with me on LinkedIn for the person if you wish to, and we'll have further chats.
Yeah. Perfect.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Wow. Well, it sounds brilliant, and I think sounds like you might have Canada nailed.
Excellent.
Brilliant. Yes. Let me just check some comments here. I think, and then we'll do the phrase of the week, which would be great to have. So there's a comment here from Simone Robinson. When boards are not ready for whatever reason to embrace diversity, how can we as stakeholders, as opposed to shareholders, challenge those boards? And if so, what would be the best way to do this?
That's a very good question. Thank you, Simone.
Thanks, Simone.
It is more difficult if you have a company that hasn't got shareholders, right? Because normally the AGM is a really good place to go. And there was a group in Germany, for example, with gender that set up, they bought 1 share in each listed companies and turned up at the AGM and asked uncomfortable questions. And then the first year was okay, they could sort of woof it off. But then the next year they came back, and funny that they still hadn't got answers to these uncomfortable questions. And the third year, and then they bring the press with them. And then they make it clear, we've asked this for 3 years and still nothing is happening. General stakeholders, certainly employees, for example, can push for these kind of things, can ask questions and make sure they come together. Again, together we are stronger. Right? Never let someone sort of divide and conquer. We need to come together, bring the voice together in a way that that the leaders you want to address can understand, and then put the question forward. I mean, again, we saw it with Black Lives Matters, because that was general stakeholders that came together, made noise, and made a difference. Right? It changed. Sometimes you can do one stakeholder. Look at Greta Thunberg, right? I mean, you can also be the one person. It always starts with one person somehow, but then it has to be something that then spreads. Bringing people together is very, very powerful, and we have seen that in history again and again. And people who doesn't like that will try to split people up again. But when you come together as a group, with a voice, with one voice, not all of you having individual opinions, you need to come together with one voice, put that forward, 2 or 3 bullet points, and say, and here's the people behind it. Then you can make change, and you will make change if you do that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sound advice. That's something that assuming just that simple question, maybe even asking, why is our board not more diverse, and
That's
what are we doing about it, right? And just putting that on the agenda repeatedly, nicely.
That's right. Keep putting it on, and then point out, I have now put it on for X number of years or X number of meetings. Because then you've got your trail of evidence, right? And that's what you always need, like an audit trail of evidence for everything that you do. And then It's a bit dull doing it year after year, but I've done it for 15 years, so I mean, other people can do it a bit, right? It works. I guarantee you, it works.
Well, I think that point about a paper trail and making sure it's on record, because that's what you can keep coming back to and asking. If it's not on record, it's a very difficult conversation.
Yeah, you can't use it for anything. But once you put things on record, which is what you do at AGMs, whether it's, not-for-profit organizations that has AGMs, whoever has an AGM, that is where you go. And you put your voice in there as a stakeholder, someone who has an interest in that organization. Or you start writing letters and you continue to write letters at regular intervals. And then you start referring back to all the other letters and why they haven't been dealt with.
Brilliant.
It's a slow process, isn't it? But I guess change does require commitment and patience, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. And this is why I've been working for just gender diversity on boards for 15 years. It's getting a bit tiring, right? Actually, I don't want to talk to people who ask me why we're doing this, because it's just Google it. Just Google it. Just talk to me about how we make it happen. And if you can't be asked to Google, actually, you don't want it to happen. And therefore, it's a wasted 5 minutes of my time or 2 minutes I don't want to waste time on people who fundamentally do not want change to happen. I'm tired, right? I'm tired, and it can't be going on like that. Just get out of my face with that and come back when you're ready to talk about how we fix it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it sounds a bit arrogant. I didn't mean to sound arrogant. I'm just like, I'm tired, right?
Yeah.
You want change. Come to me when you want change. And don't say you want change if you don't want change, because change is what I do.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a real difficulty with a lot of organisations that say they want change, but they, and beyond the momentum and the excitement, and yes, we're going to do something, then it's, things go back to normal, sort of the elastic.
Yeah. When it has to be the actual details, the actual applied change, because one thing is the words, right? But it's the applied change that we want to see, the real, it is now implemented, tick.
Correct.
It's not. Words is nothing without the action. If it doesn't get applied, words are just worth nothing.
Yeah.
Wow, we could talk. I'm sure we could talk forever.
I love
on
this.
The subject. Yes, Ben, shall we do the phrase of the week? We'll hand the floor to Charlotte.
Yeah, let's do that. You're going to erase us from the screen.
I am. So just bear with me while I set it all up.
So my message today is, for the maximum impact on the world, be the authentic you, because that's what nature intended. And the reason I find this is so important is that when people are not their own authentic them, they tend to become very unhappy. And you can't follow the purpose of why you are here if you are not focused on yourself and how you do your own things. So bring your authentic you to the table. That will make you a lot happier, and it will make the world happier.
I love that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlotte. Yeah. It's been a pleasure chatting today. And as CM said, we could have gone on for a long time, but maybe we'll have you back again as we approach the October the 15th deadline as well. And I'm sure there'll be lots of news for you to share in the coming months as well. And I'm like Wanda as well, Wanda Deschamps. So I'm up for helping with the UK chapter as well. So we'll have conversations following this, no doubt.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all the participants for listening in as well.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And so let's just to wrap it up, Better Conversations. We are on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and on Twitter as Better Convos, because it's shorter and that's what we could get. If you do want to chat to us, if you do want to come on as our guest, please do get in touch. We are here every Tuesday at 1 p.m. UK time, live streaming. So thank you so much, everyone. If you're watching the replay, please do comment like or subscribe, and check out the schedule for our upcoming guests. Next week, I am talking to Lorenzo Espinosa about mentoring. So he was a guest of mine on the podcast. So we're going to be expanding that conversation a little bit more next week. So I hope you can join us then. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Charlotte. And thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you from me too.
Cool, everyone. Thank you so much. And we shall see you on Tuesday next week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.